I don't think God is going to listen to that. I think he's going to say, "You people are freaking crazy." And if he had gotten involved, he would have spent so much energy. You probably would have killed him anyway. You know, that's what I think. That's kind of what I think at this point. These people want to kill themselves. You know, if you have to take it by case basis, but so like if you meet somebody that's like seems like a reasonable person and they don't know that they're slowly like poisoning themselves with a drink that they're consuming, at that point you can step in and say, "Hey, that drink is poisoned. I can prove it to you. Drink this instead." That's great. But these people that are just actively stubborn and trying to kill themselves, let them kill themselves. I don't know. I mean, these people are crazy. I can only, if you guys want to expend the energy, then expend it, but I can't do it anymore. And the Muslims are stupid, but they did have a good saying. I think it was Muhammad. He said the person who thrashes himself will keep on thrashing, and they will. They'll keep on thrashing. They'll keep on being stubborn. They'll keep on slamming their head into the wall in Gehenna. And if you get in the way of them, they're just going to be headbutting you and giving you a headache. That's my experience.
It's kind of like it's like someone that doesn't know how to swim and they're in the water and they're panicking
Yes.
and they're drowning. And if you go and try to help them, they will pull you down. And like
Yes.
the best thing you could do if they're uncontrollable and if they don't like stop and like let you kind of you know calmly take them out, you got to leave them. They're gonna. It's better for you to live, and you can't save them because they don't want to be saved. They're panicking. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. And it's, by the way, guys, it's not commendable dying that way. It's not commendable to waste your time on somebody stubborn like that. Um, it's commendable to save somebody, but if you're that person that gets drowned, there's nothing good about that. Like it was, everybody at the funeral will say he was a good guy, but everybody will be thinking like, why did he waste his life on this person? You know what I mean? Like he could have been saving somebody else, and we would be having a good story to tell. But instead he chose to try saving somebody else that killed him.
Well, it
Yeah.
makes me think about how, John the Baptist, he just has a simple message: repent, for the kingdom is at hand. And he doesn't say anything more than that. That's all you can really do to a person. You just tell them to repent. If they listen, then you tell them more. And if they don't listen, then you telling them more is going to do more harm than good. At least
Right.
that's how I think about things right now. Like, just tell people to repent, tell them what they're doing wrong, and then if they don't listen, what more can you really say?
Exactly. Yeah.
There probably are some people out there though who would maybe believe if you just had a dialogue with them and like try to get through those objections that they're having, and then once all the walls are down, then they can finally just receive and listen.
Yeah.
Don't you
There
think
are.
that's also possible?
Well, like I've said this in the past, and this is just true. A person, you can spend a lot of time and energy if you want on somebody, and it is possible that if you spend long enough with a person, they will eventually crack, and those walls will come down, like you're saying, and they will accept what you're saying. But the thing is, that person like receives very little credit. Most of the credit goes to you at that point because you spent so much time with that person. If credit
Oh,
is
I
ever
heard
to
that
go to
before.
anybody, yeah, the credit really goes to the person that accepts easily with a good and honest heart to the evident assertions that are given to him.
Got it. That sounds
That's the
familiar. I've
person that really
definitely heard you
receives.
before. Go on.
Yeah. Well, I've said it a lot because it's true, and I've heard the fathers talk a lot about that concept, and Jesus talks about it in the Gospels. Um, it's just the person who accepts easily is always the person that God is going to favor more, and they can expect more praise. The person who takes forever, it's like they can only expect so much praise.
Where does Jesus say it when he says, "Don't cast your pearls before swine"?
That's related to it, but it's more when he's talking about if you kind of like read when he talks about it's just like this idea of like how judgment works in the scriptures and whatnot. And first of all, like I based that on like what the fathers have to say about John the Baptist and how he did things. And they say that whenever John is being like very harsh with somebody and just very direct, if that person like immediately accepts, then like it's an opportunity for them to get more praise, is what the fathers say.
Uh,
um Whereas like the more gentle you are with somebody, the less praise they get, would be the what you would take away from that. So if you understand that basic principle from the fathers, what they're saying about John the Baptist, then that would follow what I just said. But as far as like what Jesus says, it's like whenever he's pronouncing the woes, if you remember.
yeah. Woe unto you, Chorazin. Woe unto you,
Crazy.
Bethsaida. Yeah.
Bethsaida, yep. Yep. He says, if the works that were performed in you had been performed in Sodom and Gomorrah, they'd still be around today. So like basically like this also has to do with it. Like judgment is also very much like about comparison also. So like this is another factor as well. Like um if a person takes a very long time, if you spend a whole bunch of time on a person, like I was saying, and they finally accept it, the likelihood that they would still be judged is still possible. They would be judged, even though they would get the credit for eventually accepting it, they would be judged by the person who, if they would have heard it, they would have accepted much faster. And if that person who gets a whole bunch of time, things being explained to him, doesn't ever accept it, then he's judged very harshly by the person that never got to hear it, but would have accepted it immediately if he had just been able to hear it once. That's kind of like what Jesus is saying there. He says, if the works had been performed in you, if the amount of effort that I had put towards you guys here in Bethsaida, if I'd put that same amount of effort into Sodom and Gomorrah, they'd still be around today. And so they will be your judges at the end of it all, is what he says.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I think I have no like reason to believe this necessarily, but I think it would be very fitting if like Judgment Day was just like God showing you like it's a wonderful life type thing where he shows you like your life if you had just like every decision that you made, just like if you made a different decision. I think like that would be like the most effective judgment properly probably. And I think if he did that, I wouldn't be surprised because that's very much like his style of judging people throughout the scriptures, of like way of example. So like if he just showed you like here's your life if you had never committed that sin that you really regret. Here's that, if you had lived a completely righteous life, if you'd given, alms to people, if you had just lived very righteously, if you had fasted a lot and the like, and was very selfless, if you never married, that kind of thing. Be like, here's all the good things that you would have done, and you didn't do them. You had multiple opportunities, and you didn't do them. And he's like, what's your excuse? Because like Here's the reality. I'm showing you the reality right now where you could have done it. You just chose not to. I think, like, what could be more effective than like seeing some mirror universe of yourself where like you're perfect? I can't think of anything that would make me feel like a bigger like piece of human waste, if like somebody showed me like here's the ideal perfect version of yourself and you're not him.
Do you think even people who are exceptionally good for their times are going to look at their ideal selves and be disappointed?
Probably, yeah. If that were true, like I said, I mean, I don't have anything to base that off of, but that would make sense. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. That's all I'm trying to say. So was Luke going to debate somebody, Brian? What happened with that? It's a no-go, huh?
Tomorrow we're doing it.
Oh, Luke's here now. Luke, how long have you been here?
About 8 minutes.
Seriously?
I heard everything, Nolan.
No, Luke.
You're in a lot of
No.
trouble.
No.
Yeah, tomorrow
Nobody
we'll do it.
warned
I
me.
have gone through like 10 different servers and left so many servers. Nolan, it is a
Yeah.
madhouse out there. I mean, I used to think our little server is such a humble little place. My goodness, our server's like paradise compared to these places. Total chaos. They've got all these 13 and 14 and 15-year-old kids just acting crazy, posting the most absurd meme nonsense. There's just no
We love those
seriousness.
little 13-year-old trad kings. We love them so.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe the conversations they were having. I mean, they were mocking things. They were so irreverent about things that are supposed to be so, I mean, that are so sacred. And they're talking about all the things you'd expect them to be talking about in the most mocking way. They're talking about the Trinity. They're mocking the heresies, Monophysitism and Monothelitism and all these things. And
I'm
they're
gonna beat somebody whenever I hear
oh,
that.
they're making jokes about the Trinity, and nobody's doing anything. And I'll tell you the amazing thing: all these servers apparently have priests on them, and you can see the priest
Yeah.
is online, and he's got his own little part where you can say, ask the priest a question, and there are people saying, "Hey, I've always had this question. I'm trying to understand this concept I'm reading," and he ignores every person who doesn't start their question with Father or Father bless. So he ignores them, and people keep saying, "Hey, if you want your question answered, make sure you start your question with Father." And so that this priest is going on, he's answering these questions, and they're just the most short, like couple 1 or 2 sentence long answers. He just all these so-called priests, these priests of Satan, all just seem to be the most bored, miserable people. Their responses are not caring, they're not patient or loving or anything. They're just like, "Nah, here's your answer. Get out of here." And
Yet they make a lot of good money, though, huh?
oh man, are
At
they
least they
rich?
make a little bit of cash from it, huh?
Yeah, we know they do on YouTube. That big gorilla, that one guy who charges $85 an hour, we were looking at him. That guy already gets a
That,
salary, and yet he wants to
that
get.
guy should be beaten to
Was
death.
that the guy I
I mean,
showed
that
you?
guy is the worst person.
But Nolan,
You
you
know,
Is it?
you have
You're
no
talking about
idea.
Father Moses?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, Nolan, you have
Did you?
no
Christ
idea.
mongering, they used to say Christ mongering. One of the worst sins that you could ever commit, Christ mongering. And it's happening on the daily now. I mean, it's happening every day.
Well, they keep adding sin to sin. They're not content with
Yeah.
simony, selling baptisms and weddings and things. My goodness, yeah. I'm amazed, Nolan. And I don't want to discourage you here. We're still going to go out here and do this, guys. We're going to save people. We're going to help people get out of this nonsense. But still, Nolan, I tell you, you look at this nonsense and you say to yourself, how could anybody think this is God's church? How could anybody think that looking at this? But of course, we know that there are people who've been into paganism. We know that bowing to idols, which of course they're doing, is ridiculous, and people ought to know better than that. But God still had compassion on idolaters and came and saved them and brought them out of it. So We expect a huge wave of people who we will gain many brothers and sisters out of once we help them come out of this. And God would have us do it. That's the mission God's given us, to be light and salt. Still, I look at it and I'm absolutely appalled. I'm absolutely flabbergasted. All the women mingling with the men, the ridiculous immodest profile pictures, the courtship sections of the servers. They call it courtship, but it's a bunch of girls and boys having drama and fighting with each other, and they've got priests on this server just watching it.
Oh my gosh.
It's just they're just watching it. They don't even care.
That sounds like something from like, like some atheist would like make a joke out of, like a joke show or something, like to make fun of. Like imagine Christian reality show or something. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like
that's what's so funny about it, Nolan, because they want it all to be so cordial. They're acting as if they've organized it, and they're saying, "Hey, you better say Father bless before each message to the priest." But then they've got like 15-year-old moderators on here, little kid moderators, and boys and girls having little squabbles and things.
How'd you find these servers, Luke?
These are the biggest servers on Discord. I joined the biggest
What?
servers I could find.
I think you just search them. You can search servers.
he means
On
like
Discord?
Orthodox, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think are some of them like the server of, like, I saw the video. It was the server for that one Oriental Orthodox YouTube channel.
Yes.
I've seen them before. Is it like Jay Dyer, I guess, has like a Discord server, or some of these other big Orthodox guys?
Yeah, I haven't joined his, but yeah, he
Okay.
has a big one.
Yeah. I mean, I've even heard like some like Orthodox that I've listened to online. They're like, oh, like they don't do Discord. They're like, yeah, Discord is, not like that. There's that one guy, onto ages, and he had a video talking about, like, telling people go to church, and like, you're spending all your time online arguing about theology, and it's all the teenagers, right? So I mean, some of them kind of recognize it, but still,
Well,
it's a
Adriano,
low bar.
I I don't want to toot our own horn here, but we are striving to have an orderly, organized, peaceful place for all of us to have fellowship in and to learn. And I don't even think we put that much work into organizing it. Some of these servers have like over 1,000 members, or even a few thousand, and we've only got like 150. But still, I think we're showing a lot more reverence. There's just no denying it. That we are much more serious, and the people who are organizing these things, they have priests involved, and yet they still are creating absolute chaos pits.
And
Just
it's
these.
their job. I
Yeah,
mean,
they're getting
it's
paid for
their
this. It's
job.
full time doing this.
Yeah.
And you should see what they've created. These just evil, hellish places. The memes,
They paid
guys.
for
The
Discord?
memes.
They paid him for Discord?
No, we're
No,
Yeah,
saying
no.
these
Orthodox
priests
priests.
priests are paid a salary, Raheem.
Oh, I
Not
thought
for
for
Discord though. We're
Discord
not saying for
specifically.
Discord.
Oh,
We're just saying in general. Like this is their thing. This is their shtick. I mean, they're
yeah,
not expected to go work at the bank for 8 hours afterwards. You know what I mean?
yeah. I was just wondering.
Like this is all that there is.
Yeah, man, I for sure, this is like, probably the best quality Discord I've been in out of any other. I've been in a few servers here and there, but yeah, I mean, the conduct of the people. I know the commingling of men and women, and like weird drama, and like all kinds of just craziness that goes on. I've seen a little bit of that. I've seen enough. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me, unfortunately.
But Brian, I am looking forward to speaking to somebody. You said this guy's name is Nika or Nikon. Is that right?
No, that's not who I was talking about. I was
Oh,
talking about Justin.
I see. I'm happy to speak to Justin. Have you reached out to Nika?
Nikon. Yeah, I did. He told me I sent him a message on Telegram, and he told me, let's see,
How did you get all these contacts anyway? How long have you
It's
had
from
these
Instagram.
contacts?
I've known Nincon. I mean, like I told you, I met him when he came out of atheism. I met him in person like 2 years ago. And then he joined the Catholics. And then this is so when I was part of a heretical church. He stopped going because he joined the Catholics. And then a few months later, I find out he joined the Orthodox Church. I sent him a bunch of quotes on images like a year and a half ago from David Brousseau, and he just brushed them off and called Origin a heretic. So, yeah, he just told me, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in debating. Nothing comes from most debates but pride, and my life is too busy right now. And then he said some other stuff that about other things.
Well, let me tell
But
you, the kinds of debates they have are the most exhausting things in the world because it's just a battle of convoluted language. None of them speak simply. None of them think that the truth consists in simple speech.
mm-hmm.
It's always a battle of sophistry, dialectics, and the grappling hooks of syllogisms, as Clement of Rome says. They're
That's
just
from
was
Refutations, right?
yes,
was this sort of thing common back then with like people using really complicated language instead of simple language?
yeah. I mean, it was
Yes.
actually a
And
distinguishing mark of the philosophers. It's really ironic that they want to call the early church fathers Platonists and influenced by Greek philosophy because they are the Greek philosophers.
You mean the people who say that the early church they're the Greek philosophers?
Yes, exactly.
Uh,
They debate like the Greek philosophers.
in some cases, even worse. I mean, that example from Socrates, he's really annoyed by the guy, and the guy is nowhere near as bad as like a modern Catholic or Orthodox.
yeah, well, I hope that tomorrow we can talk with Justin. I think it'll probably just be a three-way call on Discord because I'm not sure if he would want to join the server at all. I don't want to intimidate him at all with like a big call with people listening to him when it's just this. I just wanted to talk with him. I didn't really say I wanted to debate at all. I mean, I'm not sure if that'll happen. Maybe, maybe not. Um, but I knew him. I met him online when he was a Calvinist, and we had some debates or little discussions. Yeah, debates on certain issues when he was a Calvinist. Disagreements, and me trying to get him out of it. And then eventually, I found out a few months later that he has an Orthodox cross in his bio and on his online account. And what else? Yeah, it just seemed to be an Orthodox. I mean, if I go on his online profile again, I'll find out what kind of Orthodox is he. I think he's Greek Orthodox. Um, so he went from Calvinism to that. So yeah, I'm
This
I'm
is
hoping that we can talk with him. But yeah,
this is somebody. There's somebody that Luke is going to talk to tomorrow.
yeah, this guy I'm talking about right now, Justin. I just
Justin.
told him yeah, his name's Justin. Well, I told him that if we can have a discussion with me, and then I said my friend, which should be Luke, and then himself. He was gonna do it today, but I think I thought tomorrow would be better. So yeah,
It'd be a little bit better.
yes. Let me find
And
it
that's
here.
when
About about 7 p.m. About 7 p.m. What is it? 7 p.m. your time, I should say, or Luke's time.
Got it. Christian should be leaving, or he should be gone by that time tomorrow. Can't believe it's already Saturday. Wow. Days are
I
zooming
know.
by.
Yeah.
Find an Orthodox church. That's the bio here. Orthodoxy in America. That's the link that I see. It's a website. orthodoxyinamerica.org. Let's find an Orthodox church nearby. I'm looking to kiss some statues tonight.
My nearest Orthodox church is about 2 hours away, and it's in Louisiana. So much for the visible church.
Oh, what?
That's right.
2
Nowhere in
hours?
sight.
How'd you find it? To the website I told you?
No, I just looked it up on Google. You give me a website. Maybe I can find a closer one. I'll go
Oh no, this
go
this
smash
website
some
that I
walls.
this, this website that is on Justin's bio is called orthodoxyinamerica.org.
You know what's really pathetic is these so many converts to Orthodoxy lately are in America, and yet if you go and contact any Orthodox person outside of America, they will mock the American Orthodox and say, "Oh, they are just the lamest. The American Orthodox are barely Orthodox. They compromise on so many things." That's what they'll say. They barely even consider the American Orthodox to be legitimate.
Right. Well, it seems like they just point fingers at everybody.
Yeah, they have a lot of infighting, but they play this game because they want everybody to think that they are one church. And yet you can join some of them like I did on that server, and I'll say, what do you guys? I'll quote some church father, and they'll say, that's not a church father. And I'll say, oh, sorry, Josiah Trenum. I heard this guy named Josiah Trenum quoting him, and like Josiah Trenum isn't part of our church. He's part of the Eastern Orthodox Church. We are part of the Oriental. He's not part of God's church. He's outside of the true church. We're the real church. Duh, you didn't know that? And they're attacking me. They're just so out
Yeah, I
of
love how
touch.
they never say it as if like, "Oh, you didn't know."
Yeah, like compassion, like, oh, let us educate you. Let's explain this to you. Just, you didn't realize that our little
It's
sect.
so obvious. Yeah.
Luke, would you talk to him though? Would you talk to Josiah Trenham?
Of course. Of course I
Let's
would.
go talk to him.
His church is by my house. I,
Oh my
I
goodness,
was,
really?
yeah, I was thinking if I could go and have him talk to you guys.
Well, I
That'd
don't
be pretty
know.
cool.
I don't know how you could get him to talk to us. We would have to be on the radar a little bit more, but we can do that. We
Yeah.
will. We will, Robert. We can absolutely do that. He doesn't do debates though. He sits in his little office and does his little fake accent.
It's awesome.
Hey Luke,
Yes.
I'm on this Orthodoxy in America website that I told you, and I looked at an Orthodox church that is probably like 12 miles away from me. And this is a church called Church of All Russian Saints. It's, what is this? ROCOR. What does that mean? RO.
ROCOR, that's Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia. That's a group that separated from the Russian Orthodox Church and said all of the Russian Orthodox ordinations were false because they were done by the Soviet government.
Oh, it's just funny that this website, there's two Orthodox churches. There's one called, yeah, so there's this Russian one, and then there's one probably like another 5 miles away or so. That's a Greek church, Holy Cross Church. So one's Russian, one's Greek. I think that's kind of dumb.
I
And
see.
then here, how about another one here? What is OCA?
Orthodox Church
Oh,
of America. That's to the whole world. That's just one of the lamest branches.
yeah. And then there's another one here, a little bit away. This is, oh yeah, another row core,
Hmm.
another row core.
Yeah.
Protect the Holy What? What kind of name is that? Protection of the Holy Virgin Church. That's
Yeah.
so stupid.
Yeah. They take away her
And then
protection when they strip her of her veil. Sickos.
Rocor. There's a few Rocors near here. OCA. Oh wow. They must be popular down here. Romanian. That's one thing that I really want to like next time I ever talk to next time I talk to an Orthodox uh and they bring up Matthew 16 with me, I sort of want to ask some questions a bit about like like they'll say, yeah, well, we're the true church, and then bring up, okay, well, so the Catholics say the same thing. So which church is it? And then going a little bit deeper, they're like, no, okay, so we're the true church, the Orthodox Church.
Yeah,
And you're like, okay, and then you're like, which branch?
yes,
Is it your branch? Is it the
exactly, and
other branch?
be philosophical, Brian. Say, how is a person, the average person, supposed to figure that out? How are we supposed to know which one is the true church? Because these guys like to say, just go ask your priest or whatever. Go ask your local priest. Find an Orthodox church near you. But we'll say to them, well, wait a second. How do I even know which church is the real church? You can't just tell me to find a priest nearby. So, how is the average person supposed to know what is the real church? And of course, the only answer, guys, there is no other answer. You will never find a different answer except, who knows, like some Protestant answer, like, pray, ask the Holy Spirit or something. But the Orthodox won't say that. They don't do that kind of thing. The only answer to this question is, well, you have to look at church history. That's the only way to know which church of the Orthodox, out of the Orthodox or the Catholics, is true.
I feel
And
like
and
after talking, yeah, go on. Sorry.
well, and guess what's going to happen if you go and look into church history? You're going to find that the Orthodox and Catholics have departed from the church. You're going to find, and if you read the scriptures, you're going to find that Jesus predicted a great apostasy. He predicted that when he returned to the earth, he wouldn't find the faith. He predicted that it would be like the days of Noah, and the apostles also speak of the apostasy and of many antichrists that are entering the world. And the church itself said that there would be an antichrist. They said it's approaching. Cyprian and Hippolytus in the 200s, mid to late 200s, are saying the church is in trouble. It's starting to look really bad. And then you get to the 300s, and you have Christians like Athanasius or Hilary saying, well, the Antichrist is here, guys. Constantine and his son Constantius are Antichrists, completely laying waste to the church. And then what do you have after that? Well, you have these emperors who are trying to restore everything. They say, we're going to get back to normal. We believe in the Trinity again. But now they have a ruined lineage. Guys, all you got to do is look at church history, and you're going to realize that this was predicted. All this nonsense about, the gates are not going to prevail against the church, meaning the church will always be faithful to Christ. It's a bunch of nonsense. Who even believes such a thing? All you got to do is look at the Orthodox Church and see how many different branches there are, and that they've all excommunicated each other. And you could ask this question: so, did the gates of Hades prevail against all the Oriental Christians and against all of the Assyrian Christians? You'd have to say
Got
yes,
'em.
you Eastern Orthodox. You'd have to say gates of Hades prevailed against all of the Ethiopian, all the Coptic, the Egyptian, over all the Assyrian, and it's just your Eastern. And it also prevailed against, a lot of the Russians lately, because they're saying these Russians are so corrupt and evil. So, all right, apparently it did prevail over a lot of the church. Yeah, but be philosophical and ask them, how am I supposed to know which church is the true church? And if they say look at history, then you say, oh, I have. I've looked at history and I found out that the early church believed that the leadership was going to fall away someday. And I think it happened. And ask them, do you know about Nicaea? Do you know about how after Nicaea, all the bishops were replaced by Arian bishops? And that all the true bishops were exiled? Ask them, do you know about that? And if they say, that's fake news, that's a conspiracy theory, then you bombard them with quotes. And if you need the quotes, then I can give them to you. We need to put them on the website. But we've read them out in a few calls.
I feel like after a lot of these conversations, it would be a lot easier to talk with someone next time, or especially when someone brings up that not that what Jesus says is pathetic, but just like trying to use that verse to teach something pathetic. Like that, oh yes, that means that the church is never gonna fall away. Absolutely, just never. The devil can't get in; he can't corrupt it or anything. Just yeah. So just by this discussion alone, and a bunch of others, not alone, but just this discussion plus others, I think next time it'll be a lot easier. So, okay, do you want to kind of do like a run, like a test? Like maybe you play the, or I can play the.
And I can tell you what his responses will be.
So who do I play then?
Play yourself, Brian, and let Luke grill you. See how you do.
Okay.
Here, I'll be one of these guys.
Okay.
By the way, Brian, there is no telling what they're going to say. They love to change the subject. It's one of their favorite things to do. They're all over the
Really?
place. Oh my goodness, yes. Every experience I've ever had with an Orthodox or Catholic just switch the subject over and over again. They'll make a stupid objection, then you answer it, you obliterate it, and then they switch to the next subject without acknowledging that their objection was completely false. They've been wrong about it for years. They've been making this objection and thinking it's a good argument for years. And it's one of the reasons they became Orthodox. Things like the gates of Hades argument, gates of hell not prevailing. And you answer it and you say it's never been the view of the church that this is referring to leadership being incapable of falling away. And they'll say, well, I got another one for you. By the way, before we do it, Nolan, I have to tell you a new one I've heard, or at least I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah.
Well, this person was saying that veiling is so insignificant that no council even mentioned it, so just don't worry about it. And he said, I also noticed that you had Origen in your list of quotes, and again, this guy's like, Origen's anathematized. And I said, I see. And he says, yeah, the ecumenical council anathematized him. I said, well, I know about an ecumenical council that was quoting him. It says the bishops were quoting him, and then they published a book called The Decrees of the Council of Nicaea. I said, do you believe that council is ecumenical? And I was being facetious, of course. I was being sarcastic. And he goes,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, it is ecumenical, but there was another ecumenical council 200 and some years later that then said Origen was excommunicated. I said, well, even the documents, the homonoia, the acts of that council didn't have Origen's name explicitly in there. And some of the earliest references don't have any reference to Origen. So a lot of people think that the name of Origen was inserted into those anathema anyway. But I just was pointing out some of those things. And he says, well, forget about the ecumenical council. Forget about the fifth ecumenical council that anathematized Origen. He said, I can give you an even better proof than that, even if the documents were forged. And he says, don't you know that one of our ascetics had a vision where he saw Origen in hell with Arius? Now, what would you say in response to that, Brian? One of their ascetics in the 800s saw Origen in the fire. Okay, boom, you've lost. Like, they could pull that out about anybody. They could be like, I saw Irenaeus, I saw Ignatius, I saw anybody I don't like in hell. All right, what's your response?
I mean, if someone's saying something that's stupid, I mean, I don't.
You could just back
I'm
out.
not.
You could, but you know what, Brian? You can destroy them. You could,
Yeah.
like, I know how Nolan feels. I feel the exact same way. Nolan looks at this stuff. He hears the insanity. He doesn't want to answer it. But guys, you can
Oh
answer
yeah.
these
No,
things.
I would close my ears and run away.
Yes, and you can. That's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. But you can always ask
So
questions, guys. The best way to defeat somebody in a debate and to show other people how insane and how evil this is to ask the right questions, because you can't surrender, okay, guys? You have to know why that's totally insane. You need the reasons. I know that people are going to say insane things like that. Like when that person said that the only reason Paul wants women to veil is because he's from Tarsus, and they were really big on veiling in Tarsus. They'll pull out the most bizarre things, and you say, oh, you're out of your mind, I'm out of here. No, you got to answer it. What are some good responses to such an absurd thing? I'll tell you the best response to any insane statement is questions. You say, so an ascetic had a vision about Origin. He had visions. So do we trust all the visions of all these ascetics? Do we trust all the visions of the Catholics, for instance? Catholics have a lot of visions. Do you accept all those? You know, they came from some really pious seeming people, virgins and people who fasted a lot and donated a lot of their things, you know? What about their visions? They're going to say, no, all their visions are wrong. I'll say, okay, so the Catholics are rejected. Okay, now in the Orthodox Church, do any Orthodox monks, any Orthodox ascetics, do their visions ever contradict each other? And of course, guys, you don't even have to look it up. You know what the answer is. Of course their visions contradict each other. You say, I see. Wow, interesting. So they contradict each other a lot. Do the church's doctrines come from these the visions of these monks? Does the church lay down its rules based on these visions? Is there any authority in these visions? If you were just to say, so and so had a vision, and if they say yes, you say, where does the church say that? Where's that doctrine in the church? Go ahead and lay that out. Lay that out in an ecumenical council if you want. They'll never be able to do it. And you can say, interesting, okay. So nobody ever taught that in the early church or in any of these centuries, never in any ecumenical council, and their visions all contradict each other. And you tell me that I shouldn't listen to the Catholic visions because they're all made up, and you're saying all those Catholics are making stuff up, they're liars. I see.
I've seen videos where there's Catholics, I think, or yeah, I saw a video from a Catholic guy who was basically condemning the Orthodox, being like the heretical Orthodox Church, like basically condemning them.
Certainly,
So
of
like,
course, they
and
think
then
that
there's
they're in sin.
others, and then there's others that think that they're brothers. There's some that condemn the other, and then there's others that kind of be like, no, they're just separated brothers or something like that.
Brian, did you see
We
the Hall
we
of Fame thing that I posted today? It was too funny. You saw this?
I was at work, so I wasn't able to completely
Let me
look at
read it
it,
to
but
you.
I
I
can.
observed a crazy exchange in let me share screens. I observed this today. It blew my mind. Of course, I shouldn't be shocked at such things. It happens every day. Okay, this is a real conversation. Somebody joins the Orthodox server, okay, today. He says, I believe in the Orthodox faith, in the Orthodox Church, but I'll only be able to go when I'm 18 years old. Meanwhile, I'll go to the Roman Catholic Church. And then a guy responds. He says, I'm not a priest, so please take it with a grain of salt, but it is better not to go to a church if it's Roman Catholic. It's like the Christians going to pagan temples. Ask a priest if possible, but best not to go worship with schismatics. God bless you. And then the guy
What?
responds. He says, I know, isn't that crazy enough? But then he says, that's why I'm going to it. I asked advice from the nearest Orthodox church priest, and he advised me to go to the Roman church. And the guy goes, huh, oh, okay, fair. Can you believe that?
What?
And guys, there
That's
are some priests.
crazy.
There are some Orthodox priests, I'd say them probably the majority, but who knows these days, who would say, absolutely don't go to a Catholic church. They're accursed. They're anathematized. None of their sacraments are valid. And then there are some that would say, you can go if you want. Oh, that's just totally indifferent. You know, just ask your nearest priest. See, guys, the Orthodox Church they don't have official teachings on so many issues, the most basic issues. They just say, go ask your local priest, whatever he says, just go along with that. His version of Christianity, his little religion he made. Remember that guy Bob Nolan? Remember the monk who said that he knew some
Yeah.
people, he actually knew some people who had been following some practice that was invented in just like a couple decades prior by one of their priests. And so when they became Orthodox, they had been in the church for like 20 years or something. And so they're in the church and they're doing this thing that their priest told them, this is how we do it in the church. And then these guys, after their priest dies, they start teaching other people, this is the apostolic practice that's 2,000 years old. And then some other
What?
people came over and
Goodness.
they informed them, they're like, that's just what your priest was doing. That's his own little thing that he does in the church. That's not apostolic. And they're like, what? We just assumed the apostles were doing this 2,000 years ago and that this was an unbroken tradition. And this guy, Bob, who we were speaking to, he's a monk in the UK. He was saying, yeah, that was kind of embarrassing. But that's how it is, guys. It's the most laughable stuff going on in the Orthodox Church. The things they do that they pretend go back to the early church. And I only wish that I could say that they're a new religion. They've created a new thing, but they've only gone back to paganism. They've only gone back to the most basic breaking of the law. We don't bow down to images. We're not babies. We're not fools. We're not immature in our thinking. We are spiritual in our thinking. Why would we be making ourselves the servants of dead objects, dead matter? Bowing down and kissing them. Give me a break. And never once do they appeal to the early church's witness. They always appeal to arguments that they've invented, that they think are clever. They'll say, don't you kiss a picture of your family member? Now, wait a second. Even if I did kiss a picture of my family member, does that mean if I do something that, well, it automatically has to be correct? I mean, you could say that I was doing something, but that doesn't prove whether even what I'm doing is right or not. What you have to prove is that the church always taught this. Maybe kissing pictures of my dead family members is wrong.
Then they'll be like, well, the church presently teaches it, so this is the way.
Yes. You know, the people don't make distinctions between things, and they don't understand that we ought not to love the world. It says that. James says that. Don't love the world or the things of the world. John says that. If you do love the world, then the love of the Father isn't in you. If anybody loves the world, then they're not of God. And God's love isn't in them. My son Eli, he's only 4 years old, just turned 4 years old, and he corrects me all the time. I'm used to using the word love, but sometimes we'll talk about something, my wife will make a good dinner or something, and I'll say, oh, I love it when you make this. And my son will always say to me, Dad, we don't love food. We like food. And I'll say, you're right, Eli. I like this meal. I don't love it. He says, Daddy, we love people. We don't love food. He says that to me.
That's a smart boy.
Yeah, he likes to correct me, but that's such a basic thing, guys. That's not some nitpicky detail. No, we don't love stuff. We don't love the world. We love people. And the Orthodox, think that, oh, you ought to love the picture of your family member. Well, no, I love the picture of my family member, but I'm not going to caress and fondle and kiss an object or a picture as if it were my family member. That is superstitious. That is immature and foolish. That shows a mind that doesn't really see reality the way they ought to.
Just smother it with kisses, get your saliva all over it, so you have to replace it with a new one.
Yeah, it's
So
not.
basically, be like the Muslims, Orthodox. Why don't you face your icon, face your image, start smooching it, and then run circles around it? Because they're pretty close to being Muslims at that point.
Yeah, put it. People who have pet rocks and things. I mean, that's akin to what they're doing. They're treating this thing like it's a person, and it's not a person. It is the height of superstition. Nolan, you remember Bob was trying to convince us of this. He's like, no. You have keepsakes of things that remind you of the person. He says, I have this old friend, who I knew in high school, and he killed himself, and I've still got his shirt. He says, I've still got his shirt, and I hang on to that thing. And we said, Bob, why are you hanging on to a shirt of a man who killed himself? Why are you doing that? You know where that guy is. Why are you doing that? Don't you think this proves you're not being rational when you do these things? You just want to remember him, or you want to just be attached to him still? Why are you doing this? He goes, yeah, you're right. Maybe I should get rid of that shirt. Yeah, Bob, maybe you should get rid of the idols too. You see, guys, why in the 600s, around that time, 500s, 600s, when you see people starting to go crazy with the images, especially because Islam was wiping out all the paintings that they ever found. You see why there was a group of Christians called the iconoclasts and why they rose up. Because when they saw this starting to develop, seeing people be affectionate with pictures, and they see, wow, this is such a pagan way of thinking, their immediate knee-jerk reaction was, let's just start smashing these things so that people don't do this anymore. Let's smash these pictures and statues because we want people to quit this. And unfortunately, that only made others more zealous to protect the images. It didn't. It only made them want to defend them more.
At the Second Council of Nicaea, isn't this one of the things they bring up, that there's people who like they anathematize those who smash idols? They were basically condemning these people who were
The iconoclasts.
condemning them.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
I
interesting.
mean,
We were talking with
yeah,
Nolan about reactionary politics and how, one side of the politics, or just two sides of anything, like one reacts to the other, and they assume, oh, this is the true belief because the enemies over there are saying that are, against us in this. But it's like sometimes the left wing happens to get things right. So like sometimes, these Muslims, these new people happen to get these things right, and yet this whole, so maybe that's, I guess that's where that became tradition. It was just a reactionary thing.
Man, I sympathize with it though, Luke. I want to go smash some pictures.
I do too,
Anytime you
Nolan.
see something like
I,
that, that
I,
is your instinct. You say,
of course,
I
of
want to
course.
send this thing straight to hell. That's what you think.
You want to put it in the flames. You don't just want to smash it. I want to burn it. I want them to watch it burning.
Yeah,
But
one guy,
look,
Jonathan, said I was very extreme. He said that was kind of extreme of Nolan to make his point that way about
to say that he would burn it, what's
burning a
his
picture.
problem? Nolan, I have had visions of having videos on our channel where we get images,
Me too.
maybe even we
Me too.
secretly like get people to send them to us because they think we're Orthodox or something, and then we say, I want to show you how I feel about this stupid image. And you have burning ceremonies, you invite others to do it. I want to do other things to it. But see, listen, that is not going to convert these people. You want them to do it themselves. You doing it to the image, first of all, it's not some righteous deed. It's not going to get any credit from in God's sight that I can think of. I mean, maybe a teensy weensy. Who knows? I don't think so. I don't know why God would consider that some good work. But in any case, it's not going to convert anybody. It's not going to change their mind. It's just going to radicalize them. You got to get them to change their mind and hate these things and do it themselves. It's much more meaningful coming from a person who used to be an idolater to smash these things.
I one time I saw a while back like a Protestant church. It was like a YouTube. They're showing the sermon. It was a deliverance thing. They're Pentecostals, but they had people come up and like bring your idols and smash your idols. Uh, and it was kind of cool. It was like an interesting thing, like let go, like they have this attachment and they're being afflicted, and someone had a little Mary statue and they go and they're smashing the idol on stage. And of course, that would be something that the Orthodox and Catholics would be like, oh, look at these silly Protestants. But I think that was actually pretty. I think that's a cool thing, like for the person themselves to take it and to smash their own idol. To, like finally let go of that.
Agreed.
It's really impressive how quiet you guys can be and for how long. Somebody I expected would speak by now.
I know. I know.
I had a question. What do you guys think about wedding rings?
People have been putting something on a person or an animal who they possess, who they've acquired, a slave or whatever, for a long time. It's very, very common to put a ring on somebody or on an animal.
Okay.
Yeah, the early church knows about it. Clement of Alexandria talks about it, that for marriage it's normal to get a ring.
Oh, so this is pretty old custom then.
Yep.
As far back as Genesis.
Yep.
Like Adam and Eve?
No, Jacob
Oh,
tells some of his servants to take their rings off.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah,
I
people
mean,
used
this is
to.
what
They
it
used.
is.
You read in Exodus how they would get an awl, meaning they would actually fuse together a little ring of metal. They'd put it through your ear and then fuse it together so that it'd be stuck in your ear. The only way you could pull it out of your ears if you ripped your earlobe. That's how masters would keep control of their slave. They'd have a little object, a little ring in their ear that has their name on it and would say this person is owned by so and so. But finger rings are they're common for marriage. At least they go back 2,000 years, maybe earlier. I don't know. I got rings, but yeah, I don't do the rings anymore. I'm done with rings. They get in the way, especially if you're like washing your hands. If you handle raw meat or something and then you get it on your ring, now you gotta like carefully wash your ring and all that. I'm not gonna do it.
Seems like a good thing to wear in public, maybe. Like, I don't know.
Eh.
I guess it depends who you're around. I was gonna say, well, so people don't make advances, but like who are you around that someone's gonna try and make an advance and be like, nope, look at the ring, I'm married.
Whenever I
Like,
go out, I'm with my wife and my babies, and I think everybody can tell we're married.
yeah, yeah.
Besides,
So it's almost
if a woman's veiled, nobody walks up to her anyway, and I think that's the reason you would have a ring on your wife, is just so that everybody knows that she's off limits. But a veil accomplishes that. Well, I asked this deacon to answer the question. Everybody said, Luke, ask the deacon on this server. He'll answer it. And he's answering other people's questions. I asked this question real early in the day,
You
3
even started
o'clock,
with Father.
and he still hasn't answered. Oh, no, I didn't. I went to the deacon. I won't do it. I won't compromise. I will not call that guy father. I'm asking the deacon. I consider that a sin.
Have you gotten kicked out of any of the servers?
No, I let myself out of a couple of them. Like 3 or 4, I just left.
I see. I'm surprised like they didn't kick you out of that first server
One of them
that you
gave
were
me a.
showing us.
Well, these people are so wild and rambunctious. What I was saying was nothing compared to how wild these people were acting.
I see.
And they had no control over it. There were people who'd been in that server for multiple of these servers for a long time, acting very crazy. Have we run out of things to talk about?
Still nothing.
Total.
Isaiah, you must have something. Isaiah's gone. Oh yeah, Brian, you got to do that still. When will you be ready for that? You're not ready for it now?
Sure, we can do it. I'm gonna grill you. Are you ready? Oh, why am I sharing screens? Okay, Brian, you ready?
Can't see now.
I wasn't even doing anything. I was writing something for my veiling debate. I'm writing down all my questions, all my best questions. Questions are the way to make people think, and really the way to gain the victory in any debate. Ask the
That
right
seems to be
questions.
how Justin handled it, how Socrates handles it. Oh, I'm sorry.
You said Socrates. You said the S word. Yeah, it's also how the old man managed to win
Yep,
him over.
Justin. Yeah, that's true.
Brian, are you actually ready? Do you want me to grill you with questions?
He's talking to someone on the phone right now.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll keep working then.
Manuel, there. So you know how like in English you have like some words that it like just depends on the context whether or not it's one thing or the other, but it's spelled the same way. It's the same case with phonikos, but it is the word for phoenix in Greek. The English translators, so like Brenton, I'm assuming you read, or whoever else. I don't know if Lexham, maybe Lexham did it. The great Lexham, who Luke loves so much, maybe even they did this. But they're afraid to translate it as phoenix, so they translate it as palm tree. But you have to go based on the context, like I said. Palm tree doesn't make any sense because it's talking about length of days. Like think about it, Manuel. You lengthen my days like the palm tree. What a stupid thing to say. What a like a dumb translation. It's obviously not the context. It's talking about a phoenix. But that's the Jewish word being used there. Like I said, the Jewish translations of the Masoretic still acknowledge that it's Phoenix that it's talking about. And it's
Here, I
the
looked
same
it
with the
up,
Greek. It's
Nolan. I looked it
Phoenikos.
up. Google's telling me, compared to many hardwood trees, palm trees don't live particularly long.
I looked that up once too. I think I have that in a document. They
Yeah.
don't live that long. It's
Apparently,
dumb. It's so dumb.
apparently, there's nothing extraordinary about their lifespan.
Yeah, because somebody would come up with like a cope argument, where they're like, "Well, actually, they live pretty long, don't you know?" Okay, there these this is the Greek word here we're talking about. It's either going to be phoenix or palm tree. Those are your two options. Which makes more sense in the context? Which is more commonly associated in everyone's minds with length of days, long life? It's the phoenix. Oh, hey John,
Yeah.
you're back.
Hello.
Hello, John.
Yeah,
How are
Luke,
you
I was
doing?
asking you about the
Doing
thing.
good. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, you were saying, Dante.
Yeah, I was asking about the once married thing yesterday, but you never got to it.
Oh, yes. Well, what was the question again?
It was the quote from Thenagoras.
Ah, yes. I think I know the one you're talking about. Let me pull it up here.
Yeah, chapter 33.
Did you
I
just
sent it
feel
in
that
the lounge.
did you feel that it was being too harsh or too strict?
No, I'm just trying to like reconcile it with the other quotes I've seen. Like, I'm trying to understand it.
Okay, here I'll share
Because if that's
screens.
the case, then
Okay, I'll read the
like
whole
why
thing.
not? Yeah, you can go ahead.
He says, "Therefore, having the hope of eternal life, we despise the things of this life, even to the pleasures of the soul, each of us reckoning her his wife, whom he has married according to the laws laid down by us, and that only for the purpose of having children. For as the husbandman, throwing the seed into the ground, awaits the harvest, not sowing more upon it, so to us the procreation of children is the measure of our indulgence in appetite. Nay, you would find many among us, both men and women, growing old, unmarried, in hope of living in closer communion with God. So he's talking about how the church is filled with many celibate people. He says, but if the remaining in virginity, and if the state of a eunuch brings one nearer to God, while the indulgence of carnal thought and desire leads away from him, in these cases in which we shun the thoughts, much more do we reject the deeds. For we bestow our attention not on the study of words, but on the exhibition and teaching of actions, that a person should either remain as he was born, or be content with one marriage. For a second marriage is only a specious adultery. In other words, he's saying it's a species of adultery, another form of adultery. For whosoever puts away his wife, says Jesus, and marries another commits adultery, not permitting a man to send her away, whose virginity he has brought to an end, nor to marry again. For he who deprives himself of his first wife, even though she be dead, is a cloaked adulterer, resisting the hand of God, because in the beginning God made one man and one woman, and dissolving the strictest union of flesh with flesh, formed for the intercourse of the race. And your question is about the man who is still committing an adultery even if his wife has died.
Yeah.
Well, the answer is very simple. He's saying the same thing that others say. He says, for he who deprives himself of his first wife, even though she be dead, is a cloaked adulterer. So he's saying, if you left your wife, he says, he who deprives himself of his first wife, and he goes and marries another woman, he says, even if your first wife dies, you're still an adulterer. You can't say, oh, well, my first wife did eventually die, so my second marriage is fine. No, that's still adultery. You took that wife unlawfully. It doesn't suddenly become a lawful marriage just because your other wife dies.
So a man can get remarried if his wife dies, but he never committed adultery.
Of course. Paul says that, Jesus says that. You are bound to your spouse as long as they live, but if they die, you're released. You can remarry.
Okay. I guess the only reason why I was confused is because he says once married. So.
Yes, well, so would Jesus and Paul and all the others.
All right.
The point is that once you're bound to somebody, you're bound as long as that other person lives. You can't take another spouse. So yes, he's showing that some people try to get out of it. They try to get out of the charge of being an adulterer by saying, well, my other spouse is dead now, so my current new spouse is fine. But they took that new spouse while their first wife was still alive. So it was wrong from the beginning. It doesn't become a lawful marriage just because their wife died.
Okay. Well, it's good that he talks about that because I'm sure some people are wondering about that.
Yes. He's not talking about any other situation. If somebody were to say, no, I think Athenagoras is taking a really strict stance that nobody else in the church is taking. He's going crazy. He's saying you can't even be remarried if your wife dies. If anybody were to say that, I would just say, how does that make any sense with his sentence? He says, for he who deprives himself of his first wife. So you're depriving yourself. That means you're separating yourself from her. Clearly, you're leaving that woman. It's not talking about somebody who was dead when you deprived yourself. He's saying if you deprive yourself of this woman and you go to another woman, this is adultery. Even if your wife ends up dying, even if she dies, it's still a sin. You don't separate yourself from your living wife to be with another woman, even if she ends up dying. That's always a
So
sin.
wait, is it an ongoing sin, or is it just saying you sinned past tense when she was
It's an
alive?
ongoing sin to remain in that marriage that was adulterous from the beginning.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Yes, it's an unhallowed marriage. It is evil. That vow you made to the second woman is not a righteous vow. It's not something God expects you to fulfill. It was evil when you made it. Yeah, we should make our Phoenix video, Nolan.
Yeah, thanks for the response. I think there's also one more verse I have a question about. It's in Apostolic Constitutions where it talks about a third marriage. I have to find it. I was just wondering,
Yeah, I know it.
are Christians not allowed to get a third marriage then?
Are you asking that question sincerely, or is that a joke?
I'm asking it like seriously,
No, you're.
like if
I
someone,
get it. No, I think I understand now. I get it. So they're forbidden to get a second marriage, but they are allowed to get a third. That is right, Dante. I'm glad you asked that, because it is not enough to say a second marriage is forbidden. We do have to answer the question about a third now. What about a third? And it is a big plot twist. One of the biggest plot twists in Christianity, guys, is that while the second marriage is forbidden, the third one is permitted.
I think Dante is asking about.
wait, what?
I'm
I think
confused.
Dante. Luke.
No, no, I'm saying like, let's say you got married, but then your wife passes away, but then you get married again, and then she passes away, and then you get married
I
a
was just
third
about to
time.
say that.
Okay, you're
That's what
talking
I
about
thought
if
you were
she
saying, Dante.
dies. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could ask that a little better.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, well, if she
No, he
dies.
asked it fine, Luke. He asked it fine.
Oh,
I was about to say I understood what he said. I understood what he was asking.
Well, it was in the context of apostolic constitutions, and apostolic constitutions is not talking about dying. It's talking about a third
I don't
marriage while
remember.
they're living.
I thought Clement talks about this, doesn't he, Luke? Doesn't Clement talk somewhere about this? Clement of Alexandria? I don't know. If you don't remember,
Let me pull it up.
I'm pretty. I
Let
think
me
he
pull it
might.
up. Let me pull it up. I'm
They
sorry, Dante.
strongly seem to say no. They strongly seem to say
Maybe
don't.
maybe I don't remember it correctly.
It seems to be
Does
strongly advised against.
apostolic constitutions talk about the third marriage after death? Is that the context? Is that what it is saying is bad? Let's read it here. I'm sorry, Dante. I was being too sarcastic. I'm sorry. Here we go. I have it here on the website. For you ought to know this, that once marrying according to the law is righteous, as being according to the will of God. But second marriages, after the promise, are wicked, not on account of the marriage itself, but because of the falsehood. Third marriages are indications of incontinency. So it's talking about a person who just loves sex. It's the only reason a person would get a third marriage. But such marriages as are beyond the third are manifest fornication and unquestionable uncleanness. So he's saying anybody who were to take a third marriage, anything beyond the third marriage, he's saying that's somebody who nobody would deny is just a filthy person. I think that's true. I mean, even in society today, you meet somebody who's had 4 marriages and you know that person's completely out of their mind.
Kent Hovind.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Do you think, Nolan, this is talking about after death, though?
I
I
don't
think you should
know,
check.
but I thought
Oh, go
Clement
ahead.
talks about this. To be honest,
He says, for God in the creation gave one woman
I
to
don't really
one
care about
man.
apostolic constitutions.
I get over it. Apostolic
Clement,
constitutions is good. It's very ancient. I
a
was just
real church
reading.
father, once says. I think he talks about it. I'm pretty sure it's either the instructor. I think it's the instructor. It might be. I can't remember. I did read it somewhere though, and they were like, "We caution against getting remarried a second time after your spouse has died, but we do allow it." but we really say don't do the third one, basically.
Yes,
I
after your
don't think
spouse
he
has
was
died.
completely. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
that's all.
Yeah, I remember
Well,
the same
the
thing.
dumb translators were like, "Oh, we don't know if he's talking about while they're still alive or not. He's obviously talking about when they're dead."
But Nolan, listen, he says, "For God in the creation gave one man or one woman to one man, for they two shall be one flesh. But to the younger women let a second marriage be allowed after the death of their first husband, lest they fall into the condemnation of the devil, and many snares and foolish lusts, which are hurtful to souls, and which bring upon them punishment rather than rest." You think, Nolan, that the reason why Paul specifically says that the young widows should be married is because of what Jesus says, that if a man divorces his wife, he causes her to commit adultery? And it's this
Yeah,
idea that, well, she's going to be needing somebody. She's going to be tempted either to turn to prostitution to support herself because her husband's gone,
yeah,
or I don't
of
know.
course. That's why he only talks about the women and not the men.
So you think this is something
Like that.
specific for women, but men really ought not to
It,
be taking
uh,
second marriages.
True. I believe for both, ideally they shouldn't, but it should be given if they really want it. But obviously he thinks of the women first because the women are the much more perilous of the two.
Yeah. Now, the issue here is not adultery. When we're discussing this, we're not talking about whether it's adultery or not to marry after your spouse has died. Obviously, it's not adultery if your spouse is dead. The scriptures are quite explicit. But we are discussing, me and Nolan right now, the issue of whether it is,
Pathetic.
yeah, it shows some kind of incontinency or, yeah, something like that.
Pathetic is the right word.
You're very loyal to your wife, Nolan. That's admirable. Well, my wife tells me all the time if I die, she could absolutely never marry anybody. Hopefully, I mean, I'm sure I know all my brothers would take care of her. They would never say to her, "Hey, if he wants to take care of you, you have to get married." They would never say something like that. Or I guess they would not say, "We refuse to take care of you. Get married to somebody." They would never say that. I know that all my brothers would take care of my wife if I died. Nobody would say, you have to get married or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that really is how it ought to be. If a woman's husband dies, the church takes care of her and the children. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm sending the same quote but from the ordinances because it words it a bit differently.
Send
If you
it.
could read that. I just sent it in
Okay.
the
Let's see here.
chat.
This is Ordinances, chapter 14. Nolan, do you have an issue with ordinances? Ha! You have nothing.
Wait, does Nolan not like apostolic constitutions?
It's because of the stuff that we know has been added. We know that Ordinances of the Apostles is it's older than Apostolic Constitutions. We know that document has been added to over time. So is that the reason, Nolan? I'm pretty sure I can speak for Nolan here. You want me to speak for you, Nolan? Nolan doesn't like how untrustworthy it is. He doesn't want to be caught with somebody saying, "Hey, it's in Apostolic Constitutions," but then it ends up being something that was added in the 300s.
There's nothing added after like the 400s is the thing. And so it's not like we're not talking like it was added to yesterday or something like that. There's a lot of stuff that's obviously based on like the Didache and would have been originally written by the apostles, but it's just not something that I read, to be honest.
Come on. It's great, Nolan. It's one of the best books in all the church fathers.
It's not in my vocabulary.
It's one of the best.
So which one was added to? Was it apostolic constitutions or ordinances?
Dante just posted Ordinances, the manuscripts of Ordinances of the Apostles, which is word for word the same as Apostolic Constitutions.
Right.
Those manuscripts are much older, but Apostolic Constitutions has 2 additional books at the end. So instead of 6 books, it's 8 books. And scholars think that these 2 final books were added sometime in the 300s. But you know what? I think the scholars are mistaken. I think they're wrong about that. I think, because you can even read Basil and others in the 300s quoting canons from that 8th book of Apostolic Constitutions. So we do know that it's been added over time, but I don't think it was added that late.
Isn't the 8th book the one with all of the laws is not the right word.
Yeah, the 80 or 85 canons, yes. And I was saying Basil quotes from one of the canons in there. He says, "We in the church have an ancient canon which forbids priests, blah, blah, blah." And he gives the canon. And it's in Apostolic Constitutions. It's one of the 85. But he says, we have an ancient canon. So I don't think the 85 canons are that. I don't think they were written in the 300s. Maybe a couple were added in the 300s, but I think a lot of them are very ancient. But because of the uncertainty, Nolan is reluctant to use it, and I understand, I relate to that, because if you don't know what's added, well, you're in trouble.
Yeah, Luke, that always confused me because people would say it's like written in the 300s, but yeah, like in Canon 85, it clearly sounds like Clement. He says, "Read my epistles I wrote."
Yeah.
Read First
No, I
Clement and
believe
Second
that those
Clement.
parts are written by the apostles and Clement. I for the I don't think that all of it was written in the 300s. It was obviously like at the start, like a base document from the time of the apostles that was added to over the next couple hundred years.
Yeah.
And they stopped adding to it probably around like the 300s or 400s.
There's only one canon I know of, Nolan, because all those canons destroy the Catholics and the Orthodox. Those canons absolutely annihilate them. But I did look it up, and I've shown evidence for it. I've got it documented and saved in case we ever encounter anybody bringing it up in a debate. But Canon 3, if you look it up, it's always rendered in every list as Canon 3/4. It's always called 3/4. Why? Because in the manuscripts of Apostolic Constitutions, Canon 3/4 is not always there. It's rendered differently. It's clearly one of the ones that's added. And guess what? Canon 3/4 is the only thing in the whole Apostolic Constitutions that brings up some wonky stuff, specifically about offering incense during a liturgy, which, not surprising that would be an addition, because the early church, even within Apostolic Constitutions itself, understands incense to be spiritual, that we don't offer literal incense to God anymore. So what I would say, guys, if you're just wondering what's the principle then for trusting a book from the early church period, especially something like this where you know that things could have potentially been added to, and, well, we know it, because we have what Dante just posted here, Ordinances of the Apostles, which is an older version of Apostolic Constitutions, which does not include the two final books. But the answer is, if we see that things in the Apostolic Constitutions are in agreement with all the rest of the church, then we're going to call it as a witness. You get it? Very simple principle to live by.
Even the rest of the things, the entire book itself, guys, although it's not something that I read very often, I do think of it in my mind the same way that I would think of like Chrysostom or Ambrose or somebody. It's still a great thing to use against the Catholics and the Orthodox, because it shows that, the Apostolic Constitutions is not on the same side as the Catholics and the Orthodox. It's completely against them. It is a much earlier version of Christianity being represented in that book.
And it's one of your best tools, because their so-called ecumenical councils, their infallible councils, appeal to the canons and the Apostolic Constitutions. So that is an ace card, if there ever was one. They consider this to be truly from the apostles and their own ecumenical councils. Yes, they quote from the canons. And they even say there are 85 canons. But again, 3/4 shows up differently, and I know that that's been changed over time. And we reject offering literal incense to God, because the whole church unanimously rejects it for 300 years. Okay, Dante, that was a long build up to this quote here. This is from Ordinances of the Apostles. And he, Clement, says, "But let not young widows be appointed to the widow's order." And of course, that's what Paul says. "Yet let them be taken care of and helped, lest by reason of their being in want they be minded to marry a second time, and some harmful matter ensue. For this you know, that she who marries one husband may lawfully marry also a second, but she who goes beyond this is a harlot." And of course, that's talking about after her husband has died. "Wherefore assist those who are young, but that they may persevere in chastity unto God. And do thou accordingly, O bishop, bestow care upon these, and be mindful also of the poor, and assist and support them, even though there be among them those who are not widowers or widows, yet are in need of help through want or sickness or the rearing of children, and are in distress. It behooves you to be careful of all and heedful of all. And hence it is that they who give gifts do not themselves with their own hands give them to the widows, but bring them to you, that you, who are well acquainted with those who are in distress, may, like a good steward, make distribution to them of those things which are given to you. For God knows who it is that gives, even though he does not chance to be present. And when you make distribution, tell them the name of him who gave, that they may pray for him by name. Isn't that righteous? That's very good. For in all the scriptures the Lord makes mention of the poor, and gives command concerning them. And even if they be married persons, and even if, you skipped a little bit, I get it. And he adds further by Isaiah and says thus, break your bread to the hungry, and the poor man that has no roof. Bring into your house, the man that has no roof, bring him into your house, and when you see the naked, cover him, and you shall not despise anyone that is of your own flesh. By all means, therefore, be careful of the poor.
Yeah, this is why I was asking about the third marriage, because it says that she's a harlot. So that's why I was wondering about that.
Let me read it again here. I'm scrolling up.
It does. It does say it.
Let not young widows be appointed to the widow's order. Yes, that's what Paul says. Yet let them be taken care of and helped, lest by reason of their being in want they be minded to marry a second time, and some harmful matter ensue. For this you know, that she who marries one husband may lawfully marry also a second, but she who goes beyond this is a harlot.
Read it 2 more times.
Why?
I've already said, I'm pretty sure an actual church father says this somewhere. I think one of our teachers, Clement of Alexandria, says this. I think it might be in the instructor. I'm trying to remember here. I'm going to find it eventually. But they talk about it. They say that the third is not allowed. We'll give you a second, but don't go for a third. And I remember the footnote really aggravating me because they were like, "Oh, it seems like you can have."
I accept it. I accept it. I accept it. I've read it too. I'm pretty sure it's from Clement of Alexandria. Yeah, this concession is only being made just because of the fact that she is young, and for the church to have a young widow on the in the widow's order, and to be honored and taken care of as if she were a widow, would just be out of the question when she's young and still able to rear children. She's still able to have children. And Paul says in his letter to Timothy that the young widows are very unreliable, they're unstable, they're still in their youthful vigor, they still want a husband, and he says it's a bad idea to be putting them, letting them enter on the list of the widows. Rather, just let them get married, and that way she's not tempted. Because once you are entered in the order of widows, guys, you're not allowed to go get married. You've devoted yourself to God. You've consecrated yourself in a special way, and you don't have marriage on your mind anymore. So if she were to be entered into the list of widows, that's a commitment. The church is only going to take care of her if she says, I will never be married. You can't go and be entered into that list and then go get married. You get it? That's breaking your commitment. It's a very important thing. It's just like if you vow to be a virgin your whole life, then that is kind of like a marriage commitment. You cannot break that. If you go and get married after that vow, you've committed a great sin, equal to adultery in the church's eyes. If you vowed to be a virgin your whole life, or if you were entered into the list of the widows. The widows was a special order of the church. The widows would pray all the time. That was their vocation. They would just pray for the church, pray for everybody all day long. And they would be engaged in good works. They'd be separated. So if you're going to be in this honored position where you're taken care of by everybody, you can't be running around looking for a husband. You need to be focused. And Paul says that. You take these small statements from Paul in the New Testament writings where he says that the widows should be devoted to prayer. And you're like, oh, devoted to prayer. Oh, that sounds nice. Oh, no, guys, they mean it. They mean what they say. Devoted to prayer means these women, these widows, these old women, were praying all day long. But anyway, yeah, Paul just says if she's a young widow, let her take care of her babies if she has any. Let them, grow up and become adults, and then she can go off and then be entered into the widow's rank. Hopefully that makes sense.
Hey Luke, if we're off this, I can talk now about what we wanted to talk about earlier.
You want to be grilled?
Yes, I want you to cook me.
All right. I'm going to cook you, sir.
Okay, so I'll just okay. Hopefully I can have a good impression. Okay, so Luke Michael Putman.
Yes, Brian.
Let's see here. How do I start this? I can't really be saying this if I'm going to have a discussion with someone.
What are we even discussing? What is the subject?
No, remember? Okay, it was Matthew 16. I wanted to play as someone who is trying to use this verse to prove either the Catholic or the Orthodox Church, and then just you kind of just destroying me,
All
trying
right.
with just questions.
Say the obnoxious things. Get it out of the way.
All right, Luke. You know, our Lord says that to Peter that upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. So that means that the church can never fall away. That means that the leadership must stay faithful to God forever. They can never fall away, Luke. It's impossible because Jesus said the gates of Hades will not prevail against it.
I see. And what are the gates of Hades?
What are the gates of Hades?
You can either ask that one first. These are your two options, Brian. You can either say, what are the gates of Hades? Or you can say, wowzers. And can you show me anybody within the first 400 years of church history who has that interpretation? That the leadership can never fall away? Those are your two options. But here, I'm just going to ask you, what are the gates of Hades?
What are the gates of Hades? The gates of Hades. Well, the gates of Hades. The Hades.
Where is Hades? By the way, you're answering exactly how they would answer. They'd be like, where's Hades? Where's that? Do you know where Hades is?
Hades is in the earth.
It's under the earth?
Yes.
I see. And what's Hades for? What's the purpose of Hades?
It's I would say it's like a storehouse for souls,
I
righteous
see.
and the unrighteous.
I see. Souls go down there, righteous and unrighteous. See, now Brian, you're gonna have to get them to admit this because you're gonna have to get them to focus on this issue. That souls go down there, and they're gonna say. You should ask them, where do souls go when they die? Yeah, they say that souls go to heaven. They don't understand souls are not going to heaven until the resurrection. So this is your first little challenge. You got to get this out of the way. Yes, Jordan? 5 in the morning. Cool. Christian will be here at 5 in the morning, so I got to go to bed soon. But that's okay. By the way, we did have a call on this, Brian. Did you ever see that call we had on this?
Pretty sure you already. Yeah. You guys had
all
it.
right. I'm still gonna grill you. I'm gonna get you. I mean, the truth is, you should be answering, but you want me to answer and show you how to answer.
Yeah, Brian, you should be on the receipt. You should be the one answering this for practice.
But I haven't really. I watched the video. I watched the call.
All right. I'll do it. All right. So, okay, Brian. So where do souls go when they die?
Souls go. Okay, they go straight to heaven.
I see. Well, the early church never taught that. They say souls go straight down to Hades. But even if you believe they go straight to heaven, I can still prove my point here. Because Jesus says the gates of Hades will not prevail against his church. So what do gates do, Brian?
Gates, they're like an entrance, or they keep people out.
Right, they close. They close over things.
Yes.
You close the gates so that nothing can get out or in. So when he says that the gates of Hades are not going to prevail against his church, is he talking about, is Hades a place where the souls of the righteous once were before Christ was resurrected?
Yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely were. They were down there in Hades. And do the scriptures ever talk to us about anything, Jesus ever doing anything to those gates of Hades when he died and then was resurrected? Oh, you didn't know?
Well,
Here, let me read
he
you Psalm 116. Yeah, you should interrupt him just like this. You should say, let me read you the scriptures. Psalm 116, verse 9. It says, "For he satisfies the empty soul and fills the hungry soul with good things." See how it's talking about souls, you dumb Orthodox? No, you don't have to say it. Listen, this is talking about the souls in Hades. Even them that sit in darkness and the shadow of death, fettered in poverty and iron, because they rebel against the words of God and provoke the counsel of the Most High. So their heart was brought low. That's talking about going down to Hades. Brought low with troubles. They were weak, and there was no helper. Then they cried to the Lord in their affliction, and he saved them out of their distresses. And he brought them out of the darkness and the shadow of death, and broke their bonds asunder. Let them acknowledge to the Lord his mercies and his wonders to the children of men. For he, Jesus, broke to pieces the brazen gates and crushed the iron bars. He helped them out of the way of their iniquity, for they were brought low because of their iniquities. Their soul abhorred all meat, and they drew near to the gates of death. Then they cried to the Lord in their affliction, and he saved them out of their distresses. He sent his word, that's Jesus, and healed them and delivered them out of their destructions. So, praise God. He saved the souls that were in the shadow of death. They were in Hades. And what did he do? He smashed those gates, the gates of death, the gates of Hades. And what did he do? According to you, Orthodox, what do you know what Jesus did just before his resurrection? What did he
he
do?
was he was in Hades.
Yeah, he went down to Hades. That's the official teaching of the church. His soul did exactly what all human souls do, and he died. It had to go down and follow the rule of the dead. He went down to Hades. But Jesus did something that Satan wasn't expecting. He smashed the gates, whatever they are, whatever they may be. It's the gates that enclose and keep captive all the souls in Hades. And Jesus told them all, you're allowed to leave now. You guys are free to leave the place where you are. And we know that he also went down there and preached, as so many church fathers testify. And some people were transferred into paradise. They didn't necessarily go all the way up to heaven. That's something we can discuss another time. But we know that some people were transferred to paradise, and no longer did Hades or death have power over those souls, but instead Jesus now has the keys of death and Hades,
Yeah.
according to Revelation. So he
Yeah.
has jurisdiction over all those souls now. Now, if you want to hear what the church fathers say about this scripture, you'll find that not one of them thinks that the gates not prevailing against his church has anything to do with church doctrine never being capable of corruption, but rather it's talking about the fact that Jesus has the power of the resurrection and that Jesus is going to bring his church back to life. He is going to walk them through those gates, and those gates are not going to be shut over his church, which is going to be resurrected. Because the majority of Christians, which are the church, are actually dead right now. They're not alive. So this verse that Jesus is talking about is referring to dead Christians. And you know it's talking about that because he's talking about Hades. That's for dead people, not living people. And you show him Hippolytus. Hippolytus says, "The jailers of Hades trembled when they saw him," Jesus, "and the gates of brass and the bolts of iron were broken. For look, the only begotten, God the Word, had entered Hades with a soul among souls." Ephraim the
That
Syrian,
makes sense.
yes,
That makes a lot more sense now after you read that psalm. I'm not sure if I remember you uh what is it, reading that in the original call that you did. Did you read that
I
passage?
did.
Oh, I must not paid attention then, because okay, these quotes make a lot more sense now. But go on.
Yes, now here's Ephraim the Syrian. By the way, this is all jumbled up. There are so many quotes on this. Go do a word search of Gates of Hades. I have never collected the quotes, guys. I did the most lazy collection of quote collection. I guarantee you I could get so many more than these. Here's Ephraim, though, very revered church father in the 300s. He says, if he was, and he's talking to somebody who denies that Jesus was divine, or that Jesus had a body like a man. He says, if he was not a man whose side was opened by a lance, and there came out blood and water, and if he were not God, who has broken the gates of hell and burst the iron bars? Again, quoting Psalm 116. And by whose command did the dead that slept in their graves come forth? So you see how destroying the gates of Hades, this is inseparable from the resurrection. See, they see Jesus now having command over the dead. He says, see, this is how the church triumphed. Oh, I wrote that. Sorry. Okay, here's John Chrysostom. He said, and John Chrysostom is about to tell you that this is also about the resurrection. But that my meaning may be yet plainer, let me illustrate it from the actual case. He raised up Lazarus by a single word merely, and showed him alive. Again he said, the gates of Hades shall not prevail against the church, and he that forsakes father or mother shall receive 100-fold in this life, and shall inherit eternal life. The miracle then is one, the raising of Lazarus, but the predictions are two, made evident, the one here, the other in the world to come. Consider now how they are all proved by one another. For if a man disbelieve the resurrection of Lazarus, from the prophecy uttered about the church let him learn to believe the miracle. For the word spoken so many years before came to pass then, and received accomplishment. For the gates of Hades prevailed not against the church. So he's saying this was proved, the fact that the gates of Hades were not going to prevail against the church, it was proved by the resurrection of Lazarus. He says if you're not going to believe the part about what Jesus predicts for the future, gates of Hades not prevailing, at least believe what you see right now. Believe it when you see Lazarus come back from the dead. So he absolutely sees this having nothing to do with church doctrine. He sees this as a promise that Jesus has, just like it says in Revelation, the keys to death and Hades, to cause them to come out from that prison. Remember, it's a prison, guys, for those souls. But Jesus is the jailer. You remember the analogy in the Old Testament that Joseph, who represents Jesus, is sent down into the prison house, and what does it say? And he became the chief jailer over all the souls. And remember, he proclaimed good for one of the people in prison with him. He predicted salvation for one and damnation for the other when they told their dreams to him. This is all prophetic of Jesus becoming the judge and the chief jailer over all the souls in prison. Here's Athanasius on his book called Discourse to a Virgin. Some people think this is pseudo-Athanasius because they're not sure it's him, but here's another witness, whoever it is. He says, remember the 12th hour, because in this hour our Lord descended into Hades, and seeing him, Hades shuddered and was astonished, saying, who is this who descends in authority and great power? Who is this who shatters the bronze gates of Hades and crushes the steel bars? Who is this who descends from heaven and is crucified, and yet is not subject to me, death? Who is this who loosens the chains of those under my power? Who is this who by his own death destroys me, death? You see, he's conquering Hades. Hilary of Poitiers, a doctor in the Catholic Church, one of the most revered of their theologians, and also loved by the Orthodox. He says, they praise him because he, the image of the invisible God, created all their host in himself, made the worlds, established the heavens, appointed the stars, fixed the earth, laid the foundations of the deep. Because in after time he was born, he conquered death, broke the gates of hell, won for himself a people to be his fellow heirs, lifted flesh from corruption up to the glory of eternity. And that's talking about his own flesh that he took up to heaven. See, Jesus redeemed that flesh. Even though it was his own flesh, still by taking flesh up to heaven, he's redeeming mankind. Because now he's the new Adam. We all attach ourselves to Jesus. So he's starting this new lineage of human beings who are redeemed, and they are now following in his footsteps. If we follow in his footsteps, we get to ascend to heaven too. Here's Epiphanius, another church father in the Catholic and Orthodox Church. He says, but his body was truly buried and remained lifeless for the 3 days, without breath and motion, wrapped in the shroud, laid in the tomb, shut in by the stone and the seal of those who had imposed it. Yet the Godhead was not shut in, the Godhead was not buried. It descended to the underworld with the holy soul, took the captive souls from there, broke the sting of death, shattered the bars and the unbreakable bolts, and by its own authority loosed the pains of Hades, etc., etc. I could find a lot more, guys. Very easy. Just do a word search of gates of Hades or gates of hell. Yeah, when they look at this verse, they're not thinking of doctrines of the church always remaining perfectly pure. On the contrary, so many of these fathers say they believe the apostasy either is happening soon or is actually happening right now.
And how much more in our own time when we're 1,500 years from when they wrote these things.
Yes. Satisfactory, Brian? I'm going to have you do it next time.
Okay, I'll make sure not to ask you again. I'm just playing. Yeah.
Good heretic.
What's
You
up?
weren't a good heretic.
You weren't. You
You
were a
weren't doing
terrible
anything.
heretic. You didn't twist the
Yeah.
scriptures.
Where's the scripture twisting? Let's see. What's a verse I can twist? If I'm a Catholic, what do I want to?
You're too
Hail
submissive.
Mary, full of grace. The angel is proclaiming Mary's sinlessness.
Yay. All right, we're going to bed now.
All right. Good night, Luke.
Good night, everybody. Very nice seeing you. So are we on a streak? Is it 3 or 4 days?
Pretty sure it's 4.
I mean, you have to finish the week. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So-
we'll have a nice little call. I'll debate a guy tomorrow, and Lord willing, it'll go
We did
well.
finish the week. Sir?
Oh, this is the 7th day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see everybody.
A lot of people in here, that's for sure.
Very good to see all of you guys. Mikey, so good to see you. And Manuel, Dante, David, Adam, Aaron, Adriano, Aramis is in here, sneakily. Robert, Nathan, Raheem, and Evan. Very good to see you too, Evan. We hope you're edified. You feel like you're learning?
I feel like I'm learning, yes.
Well, write down any questions you have. All right, guys. Good night. God be with you. Talk to you later.
What's
Good night.
the debate gonna be about?
Well, I don't know. It could be about a lot of different things, but we're just going to interact with some Orthodox and, record some calls and let you guys hear what the answers are to those people. It's good for you to have those answers because it ought to be obvious by now that no Protestant church can be the true church when they've departed so far from everything that is ancient. So the question in your mind, if you have any doubt, it's not going to be which Protestant church to join. It's going to be, do I join the Catholics or the Orthodox? And we want to show you what it actually looks like when you interact with them, what their answers are, and what ours are.
Is it like they're like one of the priests, or is it like one of the laity that you're speaking?
I'm just the apologists. We're just going to be interacting with some Justin martyrs of their satanic church. But we'll talk to some priests someday. Give us some time. We got to build up to that. No priest is going to want to talk to us until we talk to some regular people first.
Okay.
But I did ask some questions. I'll tell you if anybody answers my questions in the servers I join.
All right, sounds good.
And Kavan, I didn't mean to miss your name, but it's very good to see you too.
No. No, I thought about making a joke and I was like, no, sorry.
No, I did it purposely. I was going to wait and I was going to mention you last of all. We love you very much, Kavan. You were an old timer in here. I missed you because you haven't been in here for a while, but I hope you're doing well, and I hope to see you in person very soon.
What do you mean? I've been in the past couple of calls. What are you talking? He just hasn't even seen me. I'm invisible.
Well, we need to have more calls.
Kevon's been here the past 4 calls.
Really? He has? Oh, excellent.
He's joining more than ever.
Well, come on, it's the profile picture. I'm so used to seeing it over the last year that now it just blends in. I just don't even notice.
Right. That was a good recovery.
And you haven't changed your profile picture. Everybody's changing theirs. You and me, we just keep ours. And David, I guess.
Right. One of these days, I'm gonna switch up, and you're gonna be like, "Kevon left the server? My gosh, what happened?"
And Manuel.
All right, my boys. I love you guys. I'll see you later. Bye for now.
God bless.
Good night.